I almost walked past her. It was one of those ordinary afternoons that feel too small to hold anything life-changing. The hospital lobby smelled faintly of antiseptic and coffee, a strange combination that always reminded me of both pain and comfort at the same time. I was there for something routine, nothing serious, just a checkup I'd been putting off for months. And then I heard her say my name. Not the way strangers say it when they read it off a file, flat, unsure. She said it like she had been carrying it in her heart for years. Armin. I stopped mid-step. My first thought was confusion. I turned slowly, scanning the rows of chairs, the reception desk, the hallway of moving doctors and nurses. Then I saw her. She was older now, of course. Her hair, once jet black, was streaked with silver. Her face had lines, not harsh ones, but the kind carved by years of caring too much. She wore a nurse's uniform, pale blue, with a name tag I couldn't read from where I stood. But her eyes, there was something in her eyes that felt familiar in a way that didn't make sense. "I'm sorry," I said, stepping closer. "Do I know you?" She smiled. Not a polite smile, not a professional one. It was warm, almost trembling, like she had been waiting for this moment longer than I could imagine. "You might not remember me," she said gently. "But I remember you." There was a pause, and then she added something that changed everything. "You were my favorite patient." Something inside me shifted. A strange feeling, like a door cracking open in a part of my memory I hadn't visited in years. I'm sorry," I said again, a little embarrassed. "I don't remember." "That's okay," she said softly. "You were very young. 7, maybe 8, 7. The number echoed in my mind, and suddenly, something flickered, an image, faint and distant. A hospital bed, white walls, the sound of machines, and fear, a deep, suffocating fear. "You were very sick," she continued, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "You stayed here for almost 3 months. 3 months. That didn't seem possible. I would remember something like that. Wouldn't I? I had pneumonia," I guessed, trying to pull something, anything, from the fog. She shook her head slowly. "No," she said, "it was worse than that." And then she told me. I was 8 years old when I stopped wanting to live. That's how she put it. Not dramatically, not to shock me, just simply, like stating a fact. I stared at her, unsure how to react. "That can't be right," I said, almost laughing. "I had a normal childhood. I mean, mostly normal." She studied my face carefully, as if deciding how much I was ready to hear. "You had a rare infection," she said. "It attacked your lungs, your immune system. Your body was fighting, but your spirit," she paused. "Your spirit was tired." Something tightened in my chest. "I don't remember any of this," I whispered. "I know," she said. "Your parents asked the doctors not to tell you everything. They wanted to protect you. And after you recovered, they wanted you to move on." I leaned against the wall, trying to steady myself. 3 months in a hospital. A life-threatening illness. And I remembered nothing. "That doesn't mean it didn't happen," she added gently. I looked at her again, really looked this time. And suddenly, I saw it. A flash of memory. A hand holding mine. A soft voice telling me a story. A promise that I wouldn't be alone. "You," I said slowly. "Were you the one who used to stay with me at night?" Her eyes lit up, and for a moment, I thought she might cry. "Yes," she whispered. "That was me." Her name was Sana, Nurse Sana, and as she began to tell me the story I had somehow forgotten, it felt like she was handing me pieces of a life I didn't know I had lived. "You were scared of the dark," she said with a small smile. "Terrified, actually. Every time the lights went out, you'd panic." I closed my eyes, trying to imagine it. A small boy, weak, alone, surrounded by machines and shadows. "What did you do?" I asked quietly. "I broke the rules," she said, almost playfully. "I stayed." "You weren't supposed to." "No," she laughed softly. "Nurses aren't allowed to sit with one patient all night. But I couldn't leave you. You'd cry until you couldn't breathe." Something in my chest ached. "So I told you stories," she continued. "Every night, different ones. About brave kings, and lost travelers, and boys who fought monsters and won." I swallowed hard. "Did I believe you?" I asked. She smiled again, but this time there was something deeper in it. "You didn't just believe me," she said. "You became those stories." As she spoke, more fragments came back. Not clear memories, but feelings. Warmth, safety, hope. "I remember a story," I said slowly. "About a boy who had a dragon inside him." Her face softened. "That was your favorite." He was sick, I said, piecing it together. But the dragon was actually protecting him. She nodded. You used to say, I'm not broken. I'm just fighting a dragon. I laughed softly, but there were tears in my eyes. That sounds like something I'd say. You were stronger than anyone I've ever met, she said firmly. Even when you were too weak to sit up, you still smiled. I shook my head. I don't feel strong, I admitted. Not like that. That's because you don't remember how hard you fought, she said. She told me about the nights I refused to eat, and how she would pretend the food was magic fuel for my dragon. She told me about the time I tried to pull out my IV because I thought it was hurting the dragon, and how she sat with me for hours explaining why it was actually helping. She told me about the day I almost didn't make it. That was the worst day of my life, she said quietly. The air seemed to grow heavier around us. What happened? I asked. You stopped responding, she said. Your oxygen levels dropped. The doctors were preparing your parents. My heart pounded. And you? I whispered. I refused to believe it, she said. I sat beside you and held your hand and told you the dragon story again. I felt my throat tighten. I told you the dragon was getting tired, she continued. That it needed you to fight with it. That you couldn't give up. And then, she smiled through tears. You squeezed my hand. I didn't realize I was crying until she reached out and gently handed me a tissue. I'm sorry, I said, wiping my face. This is just a lot. I know, she said softly. But there's one more thing you should know. I nodded, unable to speak. The day you were discharged, she said, you gave me something. What? I asked. She reached into her pocket. For a moment, I thought she was just adjusting something. But then she pulled out a small, worn piece of paper. Carefully, like it was something precious. I've kept it all these years, she said. She handed it to me. My hands trembled as I unfolded it. It was a drawing, crude, messy, clearly made by a child. A boy standing next to a large, awkwardly drawn dragon. Both of them were smiling. And above them, written in uneven handwriting, me and my dragon and Nurse Sana. There was a lump in my throat so big I could barely breathe. I drew this, I whispered. You insisted on it, she said. You said you wanted me to remember that we both helped the dragon win. I stared at the drawing, feeling something deep inside me shift. All these years, I had thought my life was ordinary. That I was just average. But I wasn't. I had fought something real, something terrifying, and I had survived, not alone, but with someone who refused to let me give up. Why didn't my parents ever tell me? I asked. They wanted you to have a normal life, she said, not one defined by illness. I nodded slowly. I think I needed to know, I said. She smiled. I think you were ready. We sat together for a while after that, talking, laughing, filling in the gaps of a story that had always been mine, but never truly known. Before I left, I looked at her and said, you saved my life. She shook her head immediately. No, she said firmly. You saved your own life. I just reminded you how strong you were. I thought about that as I walked out of the hospital. The same building I had once been too weak to leave. The same place where a small boy had fought a dragon and won. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not because of fear, but because of clarity. For the first time, I understood something I had been missing my entire life. Strength isn't loud. It isn't always visible. Sometimes, it's just a small, tired boy choosing to keep breathing. Sometimes, it's a nurse who breaks the rules to sit beside him. Sometimes, it's a story about a dragon that makes the impossible feel possible. The next morning, I made a decision. I went back to the hospital. Not as a patient, but as a volunteer. Because somewhere in that building, there was another scared child. Another dragon, waiting to be fought. And maybe, just maybe, I could be the voice that said, you're not broken. You're just fighting something. And you're going to win. And as I walked through those familiar halls, I finally understood why she had said it. You were my favorite patient. Not because I was special, but because I had chosen to fight. And now, it was my turn to help someone else do the same.